Hello and welcome to a Mic'd Up podcast, a student-led podcast here in Prim International School. I'm your host Alina Giri, and today we have a very special guest here from Prim International School, our very own economics facilitator as well as UGC counselor. Let's welcome Pujan Mani Rai.
Thank you very much.
So, how are you feeling, sir?
I'm feeling very fine. I'm feeling very excited today to be interviewed by one of my own students. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. Can you please briefly describe your role here as Premier? Because even though I introduced you, it will be better if you just say it yourself as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity to introduce myself. So, my name is Pujan Mani Rai. I am primarily the IBDP economics facilitator here. Apart from that, I also work as a counselor in the university guidance team. And I also help with the coordination of the extended essays here, which is sort of like a dissertation at a high school level.
Thank you. So I feel economics is often described as a subject of choices, scarcity. But for you personally, what do you think the economics is all about? Because you have been in this for a very long time. So how would you say it in your own word?
So if I had to really make it in a concise statement, I would say economics is all about people making choices when they're faced with constraints. These constraints could be, as you said, scarcity, it could be a budget constraint, it could be a time constraint, it could be an information constraint. The reality of life is that we don't have infinite resources. That's the tragedy, right? If we were in paradise, economics wouldn't exist. I would be unemployed, unfortunately. But in the planet we live, things are very scarce. Even air is scarce. Even clean air is scarce. Clean water is scarce. So when you are faced with that scarcity, as I said, it could be time, information, energy. How do you make choices in an efficient way? That's economics. It's not necessarily about making money. Okay, many people confuse that. If you want to make money, you should study business management or business studies. In economics, you are studying choices, and sometimes these choices are very hard choices. If you are a leader, if you are the prime minister, if you're the finance minister, these are hard choices. You can't have both. That is economics.
Thank you. So has your perspective on economics evolved over time? Like how was it initially and after you came to the field that you realized, oh, it's actually like this. So has it evolved?
Sure, it evolves. I would say everyone evolves. Their views evolves. Their philosophies evolves. Their outlook evolves. So when I studied economics, I was a very young student, right? You are faced with idealism, a bit of naivete. You think that you are going to solve all the economic problems in the world. So I studied economics like that. But as you teach, you learn about the fallacies as well. So see, in class, I'll always tell you, be efficient. Always be efficient. But as a human being who has taught economics, I'd say it's okay to make some sacrifice on efficiency if you can give equity. What I mean by this is that you don't have to be 100% efficient. It's okay if you're 90% efficient and you're 10% you're not efficient and you just want to relax. Okay, that's how my view has evolved. I always say this. I invite my students also to take this role, as in there are three levels of understanding of economics. First, as a student, where you just study, where you just do the theory, you're very exam oriented. If you want to learn economics even better, teach it to someone else. Teach it to your friend, teach it to your cousin who knows nothing about economics. And if you are shy, teach it to an imaginary audience. Even better is to do it. To do it, you would have to be a policymaker. Let's say I teach monetary policy in the class. The best way to learn monetary policy is to work at Rashtra Bank and then do it, because even as a teacher, I don't know so many nuances of it, right? So student, teacher, and the doer, the executor. So obviously not everyone can intern at a Rashtra Bank, but you can go up to the level of being a teacher. So I invite all students of economics to do this practice where you just at a dinner table, you tell economic concepts, you talk about it with your parents who might know it, who might not know it. If there's a cousin who has not taken economics, try to discuss some world event from under the lens of economics.
You mentioned that being more practical is more efficient. I feel like that's what IB encourage students, because I myself, as an economics student, I feel like writing IA and like having discussion in class,
Exactly.
I find that's more practical.
Absolutely.
And since you also mentioned about you were young and naive, so did you always knew that you wanted to study economics, or was it like, oh, I want to be economist, or something led to one another, and that's
It's the latter that you said. So when you're young, you're very impressionable, right? You follow some ideal role model. So actually, when I was small, I wanted to be a physicist because I really adored my physics teacher. But when I started studying IB economics, I sort of was more galvanized towards it. Again, there are two things: there's the subject and there's also the teacher, right? The teacher was amazing. She broke down all the difficult concepts to really crystal clear points. But what I mean, it is also the fact that I have to admit it. At a point, I realized I was not quite good enough for physics. This is one thing sometimes students don't realize, that there is a gulf, like a Pacific Ocean, between IB and undergrad physics. It's a gulf. Sometimes I'm not trying to discourage people. I'm just giving a reality check because I myself got that reality check, right? So I just felt that, probably if I take physics, I love it, but I'll probably be an average physicist. Whereas economics, I thought that I could do quite well because, see, in economics there are so many nuances, so many niche, that you can catch one niche. For example, I took development economics, having come from a developing country like Nepal. So I realized that that is my forte, that is my niche. So that was also there, a reality check that perhaps I would not be a top-notch physicist. So and I invite everyone to think this clearly, because I'm not discouraging anyone. Probably you are good enough, right? But having said that, you should also realize, okay, if I study physics, and if I want to come back to Nepal, probably we do not have a lot of resources here, a lot of opportunities. Whereas since I went to development economics, there was a lot of plethora of opportunities. When I came back, I could work with both the World Bank and ADB. That's because we're a developing country, right? So I don't want to dissuade anyone, discourage anyone, but that was my story. Like, I realized that perhaps economics is, my forte. And having said that, I'm very grateful and glad that I took physics, because a lot of the tools that I learned in physics, the optimization, the differentiation, those parts are applicable in economics.
so like if you look this from a UGC perspective, I feel like a lot of students are in the verge of applying to universities and they're quite unsure about what they want to study. So what advice would you give them? Like, should they rush into, because there are a lot of pressure from the society, parents, even from teachers, and like who are unsure of what they want to study undergrad level. So what advice would you give them from UGC perspective?
Are very competitive. And nobody knew this 4 years back. I mean, the people who are working in AI, they knew this very well. But an average person like me, I couldn't even estimate the impact of AI, right? So what I'm getting at is, since the future is uncertain, nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow. Why be anxious by trying to predict that? So instead of having a label that I have to do this, I have to go to America, or I have to study this, I would cordially invite people to develop skills, be good at something. I give the example of physics. Even though I didn't study physics later on, the skills that I learned as a student of physics, I'm not a physicist, I was a student of physics, those were very applicable. My differentiation, my integration, my optimization, they were very helpful in economics. So I would say, especially with this flood of AI, do not jump into a train in a hurry. Because, see, I'll give an example. A lot of my friends, this is way back in 2014, a decade ago, oh my God. A lot of my friends went to IT. Do you know what they said? They told, IT will never run out of jobs. You'll always have a job. It's secure. And they actually struggled in computer science, actually. They hated coding. They were not that efficient of a coder. And they still said, I will take it because it's a safe job. Now I'm afraid that because of AI, there will still be jobs in the IT. Still coding, you still need a human being. But that average coder who is struggling to even code, but is doing it because it's a safe job, he will probably be replaced by some efficient AI, right? You still need human beings. I'm not saying you don't need coders. You actually need good coders. That's the difference. You don't need those average coders who went there because they thought it was a safe job. So don't jump into any train, any bandwagon out of fear. There's a Japanese saying that, if you take the wrong train, just get out of it. So don't jump into a wrong train out of fear. Oh, I might miss a train. No, it's better to miss a train than get into the wrong train. The wrong train is jumping into I don't know, math, physics, chemistry, economics, just because you think there is prospects there. Rather than that, be confident. You're young. There's so much. At this age, you can learn a new language, new coding software, everything. You're at a clean slate. Do something that you're passionate about. You're good at. Again, good at is quite important. See, I chose economics more than physics because I was better at economics than physics, as well as something that the world needs.
You mentioned AI, right? So what are, like, you mentioned you study development economics as well. So what are the other economics fields? Like, I heard there's like behavioral economics, which is still
Absolutely, there are behavioral economics. Economics is just a social science applied to anything. So you still have agricultural economics. Nepal is a very agricultural society still, right? You have labor economics, where you study about labor market reforms. You have health economics, another burgeoning field, right? You have economics of education, so you can apply it to anywhere. Just it's basically an optimization problem. How do you optimize given this budget, this constraint? How do you try to optimize the results? And as economists, we always have society in our mind. That's the difference between business and economics. In business, you are looking at profit. You are looking from a perspective of the business or the consumer or the producer. In economics, we don't ignore them. They are part of the society. But we look into this a very collectivist thought. We try to optimize the well-being, the welfare, the happiness, the satisfaction, the utility of the society. That's the only thing. So anything that has to do with society will have an economics.
So, like, till what extent do you think AI can, like, work? Like, how can, like, AI work with economics? Because do you think economy will ever be replaced by AI in future, or are there any probabilities?
So again, very good question. AI will be very good. Again, I'm not an expert. That's a big caveat. I myself didn't see the tsunami coming. Even my job is threatened by AI to an extent. So that's why I invite everyone to be good at your job, passionate about your job. Then you're irreplaceable. If you're average, then you're replaceable. Here is the example. Anything that can be computed, anything that can be calculated in economics, optimization problem, AI can do that much better. There's very little risk of calculation error. For example, if I take a differentiation and optimization problem, I can make a mistake. I'm a human being, but AI won't make a mistake. So anything that is computational, AI is much better at that. But on a larger scale, decision making, I think that's still human. Because again, I gave you this example, right? AI will try to give 100% efficiency, even if it means sweeping away villages to make a dam. It has no emotions. But as already in the beginning, I was inviting my students to do, I teach you to be efficient. But if that comes at sweeping away a village to make a dam, perhaps you shouldn't do that. And that is where a human sentiment, human empathy, human, feeling, emotions come into play. So I think decision making should remain, especially in economic decision making, because there are so many stakeholders to satisfy, right? It would truly be a sad day when we relinquish that decision making to AI. That would be a dangerous, truly dangerous situation.
I agree. So, what economic decisions or work you have done that has impacted our society globally or nationally?
Sure. I have had the pleasure and good fortune to work in school sector development program with the World Bank. Similarly, I worked with something called Event. It was about a vocational education training program run by the World Bank in my formative years. So I'm very proud that in my very little, I'm not the MVP. I was just a consultant, but a very young consultant, right? Immediately out of college, full of aspirations, full of hopes, full of almost Pollyannish, expectations. And I worked there, and I am very proud of that work. Whenever I look back to it, I'm very proud. The sad thing is that these are project based, right? This is not like a salary job where you go every day and clock in. It's a project based. Those projects are over. I need to move on. But I'm very glad that whatever time frame it was, I gave my 100%, and I saw the difference. Maybe not 100% again. Here's the thing, even if the projects work 60%, I take it as a success. So I'm very glad that I could contribute in my humble way in this event project where the World Bank funded training programs from electrician to beautician all over Nepal. So 3 years of my life I worked there. So I feel proud that I could contribute in some way. Again, I'm not taking any credit. I was not the MVP. I was just one of the workers there. But that's the attitude I think we should all have.
Yeah, so before we move further into our conversation, there's that game round that you will be playing. So the game is basically simple. So I'll give you a word and you have to say the first thing that comes into your mind. So I actually framed this question based on your profile.
Sure.
So I hope it goes well. So let's start. So just say as soon as possible, okay? So red,
Red, terror,
economics,
life,
Dhaka Topi,
identity,
group projects,
free rider problem,
Nepali food,
homely,
IB,
I be happiness,
remittance.
lifesaver.
Okay. I feel like when we are we tend to think that economics is more about money, market power, but as you mentioned, it's more about making policies, making decision. So what's the leisure known area of economics that people still don't understand in our society that you think should people know for the society to be more efficient, especially in the context of Nepal?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for this very important question. I'm not saying this as a cliche. This is a very important question. Nepali society completely confuses economics. Still, it's lumped together with business. So, especially when I talk to a lot of people who are studying economics in Nepal, also, they don't go too much into the policy making aspects. I really am afraid that Nepal is not producing enough good economists. We have great economists also. I'm not saying, I don't want to name names because whoever I miss out, they shouldn't feel that I'm missing out. But I personally know amazing economists having worked in the World Bank. It's just that we are not sufficiently creating enough economists. And here's a huge vested interest and conflict of interest because I'm an economist, but I think economists are necessary, at least for the chatter, at least for the discourse. You don't have to agree with us. You don't have to give us, prominence, but at least you have to hear. In countries like Nepal, politics takes over everything. So there's no space for economic dialogue. We don't have a coherent idea. Are you going to follow export promotion or import subsidies, even tourism, hydropower? We don't have a consistent economic policy. That is where we lag behind. Countries like US, countries like China, Japan, they have very clear economic policies. And when the politicians change, when the political party changes in power, they don't change the economic policy, which is probably going to be very short-lived because as we see Donald Trump coming in, he's changing the economic policy there. But it happens, very transparently, fairly. Donald Trump has said that this idea of globalization and neoliberal economics is over. We are going to do America first. But you can clearly see the economic policy making there. Whereas in countries like Nepal, we have not moved ahead of politics. And there's no space. I'm not saying don't listen to, I'm not saying that you have to do what economists say, but at least have some discourse. Where do we want to see ourselves 10 years down the line? At least have that discourse. And again, it's dangerous to listen to economists because every economist will disagree with each other. You will have a room with 5 economists and 10 opinions, right? They will never agree with each other. But it's important to at least have the discourse. We have to move ahead from this politics and getting stuck with the past. At least have a dialogue. And that's where we should produce more economists. Okay? And another economist might disagree with me, but our disagreement, when we debate with each other, it will bear some fruits that the politicians, the policymakers can latch on and move ahead.
Okay, so now that we've kind of come end of our conversation, so what advice would you give to your 17-year self who is unsure, wants to study physics, and is very young, studying abroad? So what advice would you give to people like us or the one when you're 17 years
Sure,
old?
sure. I would say this: don't be afraid. First of all, don't be afraid. Be hopeful. You know, so many things that we think are permanent are not permanent. From 17-year-old until now, I have changed my political thought, my economic thought, my favorite football team, my favorite cricket team, so many times. Nothing is forever. So don't have this terror that you are always in a flight or fight mode. Everything you do, it doesn't have to stick to you forever, right? So to a 17-year-old, I'd say be hopeful, be victorious, be glorious, be brave, try out new things. It's okay. You can fail, you can restart. It's all right, right? And I'd also say journal a lot, because you'll end up at a place where you have a lot of memories. It's better to, have them as a resource, right? Because a society that does not look back on its mistakes as well as its glories will probably end up repeating a lot of unfortunate, avoidable mistakes, right? So, at a personal level, also, I think reflection is very important, especially at this age. See, my 17-year-old was very different from your 17-year-old. Now you have WhatsApp, Instagram, TikTok. So, what ends up happening is there's too much flurry, too much action without reflection. You are like, there's a food, more. Don't, let's click a photo. What? And do that, but also savor the flavor. Take a pause. It shouldn't be like, I'm going to travel for 1 year. Rather than that, travel a month and take a pause for 1 month. Journal, reflect on that fun. What went well? Rest and then travel. So right now, my worry is that at this year, because I say that because you are my students, right? That take a step back, pause. Don't be afraid at all, right? And here's the thing. As a teacher, I genuinely feel this. You guys are our resources, not just for me but for the country also. See, I have a friend who became an engineer. When once we're traveling, and then he stopped, and then he said, "Look at that bridge. I designed that bridge." Okay, I don't want to tell the bridge because I'll end up revealing his name. And then he was truly proud. I was very proud. For us, there are no bridges. You are our bridges. You are the artifacts. You are the infrastructure that we're building. Tomorrow, when I see Alina, she's the student I taught in IB level. Now she's going to this university, or she's working on this financial commission paper. You are our bridges. You are those roads. You are those infrastructures that I'll proudly call my friend and say, "So you talked about that bridge. This is my bridge." I want the structure of those bridges to be strong. That's why I'm saying don't be afraid. If you are afraid, if you are anxious, if the idea is anyhow I have to get out of Nepal, or anyhow I have to go to America, or anyhow I have to go to Australia, that is a problem in the foundation itself. If anything comes coming out of fear, it probably is not a rational thing. It's a very emotional thing, right? So again, I say you are very young. There's a lot of time to make mistakes, to learn from them and move on, right? So don't worry at all. There's a there's a shairi from Faiz Ahmed Faiz. I won't say the whole thing, it will take too long, but he says, माना कि ये मुमकिन घड़ी सख्त कड़ी है, माना कि ये मुमकिन घड़ी सख्त कड़ी है, लेकिन मेरे दिल ये तो फ़कत एक ही घड़ी है, हिम्मत करो जीने को तो एक उम्र पड़ी है. You guys are 17-year-olds. Compared to me, you have so much. I'm so envious. I'm so jealous of it. But as I said, you are my bridges. You are those infrastructures. And I want them to be strong. And it should come from here. Every decision you take should be out of hope. Be naive. It's okay. Be Pollyannish. It's okay. But don't be afraid.
I also agree with you when you mentioned about reflection. I feel like people, especially of our age, should find out your why. I feel like when you stick to your why, then any obstacles, you'll be able to overcome it, right?
How will automatically come? If you have the why, how is not a big deal.
Yeah, so that's it for today's episode. But before we end this, we have a little token of love from our whole entire team. So we would like to give you this from our podcast. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk in a more informal way. In the class also we always talk, but again, as I said, in class I'll tell you, be efficient. In this podcast I'll say, be brave, be kind, be hopeful.
Thank you so much
Thank you very
again.
much.
Thank you so much.